Hi guys, welcome to week 14 of the Sober Sessions. Hope you've had a good week. Today we have the magnificent, supremely marvellous Ben Robinson. How I met Ben was he did a recording for the BBC and someone reached out to me and said, can you contact Ben because he's struggling through lockdown. And I sent him a DM and arranged a Zoom meeting. And I think, Ben, pretty much from then we kind of hit it off, didn't we? Although you're old enough to be my boy. We met in Wimbledon and we took some pants pictures in the woods. And that goes to show that you can have fun when you're sober. And we had an absolutely cracking time. And I'm honestly pleased to say that you're a good friend of mine now. So we got you on today, Ben, to talk about different types of drinking. I did a post about habit or addiction. Alex and Lisa did one about lockdown drinking at midday. And it was ironic because that day you did a similar post, didn't you, about your thing. So do you want to tell us about your kind of drinking style?
Yeah. I mean, it's a long journey, but I'll focus on kind of, when I was kind of fully down that hole, if you will. Mine was, I like to class mine as completely, well, it was destructive. Once I'd hit that cycle, it was one that I just couldn't break. And mine was both physically and mentally dependent. So I would, starting in the middle of the night, I would drink to get back to sleep at 2 and 3 every morning. Then I would then start at 9 and then just 24/7 all the way through. And I guess what sparked my kind of, not interest, but almost wanting to explore this more is learning about different people's drinking types and how, there's that stat that these guys put out that, 50% of people say, they're drinking before 12. And it just sparked my kind of argument of alcoholism doesn't have a time. Just because I drank before midday, that's not what made me an alcoholic. What made me an alcoholic is the need and, the desire and the sheer inability to stop. It doesn't matter what time of the day it was. As you said, Dave, yours was afternoon drink. It doesn't matter. It's that reliance. I think that's really important to highlight of, there's many different types of this thing. It's not just picking and choosing on times and, stuff like that. It's a really important thing.
And guys, what were your sort of drinking? Alex, Lisa, were you like a sociable evening type of drinker or?
I never drank in the week, really. Very, very rarely. If I saw, I don't know, if it was my birthday in the week, I'd have had a drink. If friends came round, I might have had a drink. But I was able to control myself in the week because of work. Was I able to control myself? I did control myself. I don't know. Not every time. I still went into work sometimes with a bad head. But weekend came and I just binged the entire weekend, all weekend. So yeah, binge drinking for me. Lockdown would have been a nightmare for me. I would have day drank then. I didn't need to day drink. I would have week drank. I think the only thing that kept me in check was my job. So any holidays, obviously, that I've been a teacher, any school holidays just became 5-day benders. Binge drinker.
Yeah, I was the same. I was binge drinking. And my husband was an alcoholic. So a lot of the time what I found I did is I weren't necessarily that bothered about drinking in the week. But I often found myself drinking in the week to kind of stay on level with him. And then at weekends, after a few, that was me gone. After 3 drinks, that were me for the weekend. I was like, I wanted to go out, whereas he was happy then to stay at home and into his glass of red wine. Where I was like, right, I'm off out now. And would find myself in random kitchens or I think once, I've met like an old school friend in a field and had a joint, and I'd never do that in real life. Do you know
that was when you were like 35.
Yeah, it was like so random. But yours sounds a bit like Ben's, William.
Yeah, so I was a binge drinker as well. So, but the binges kind of got more. We started off just weekend drinking. But then I found I'd wake up in the middle of the night and couldn't sleep. So then I'd have a drink to get back to sleep. And then I'd wake up feeling awful. So I'd just wake up and immediately start drinking again. And kind of, I think when you're binge drinking, you kind of justify it by the fact that you kind of stop after the binge anyway. But the longest period, I was just thinking about this, the longest period I drank for consecutive days was probably 2 months when I got back from Iraq. So apart from that, my entire drinking was always, I'd have 2 or 3 days drinking and then stop for the week. I'd basically go back to work. But like you, Alex, I think the reason for that was work dictated that I had to sober up. I couldn't do my job hungover and I couldn't do it drunk. It was that simple. So I'd always kind of claw back. And obviously the problem is then when you go on holiday or when you do have extended periods when you don't have to work, you just tend to end up drinking constantly for the whole time.
Yeah, let me just say though, working in a classroom is nothing like working in the forces, I don't think. I think you must have had a bit more stress than me trying to round a few kids up.
I don't know, you hadn't lived here.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Having compared it to lockdown and homeschooling 2 children, I don't think I agree with that, Alex.
What about you, Simon?
Yeah, so I was kind of different to what you guys have described. I drank every single day for probably 23 years, I reckon. I can count on the fingers of one hand the number of days where I didn't drink, but I was really disciplined. I would not drink during the day. I would start about 7 o'clock with a beer with my dinner, and then I'd drink as much wine as possible. And that was it every single day. And I think, again, my career dictated that I didn't drink during the day. I guess if I didn't have the career, I probably would have done. But it was just that relief, that release at the end of the day for me that I kind of looked forward to throughout the whole day. Like whatever went wrong, at least I've got that to look forward to tonight. And I honestly mean it when I say there were probably 4 or 5 occasions out of that whole period of time where I didn't drink. Wow. And of course it started off with a few glasses of wine, and by the end it was 2 or 3 bottles of wine plus beer every night. Yeah. Sometimes I'd drink spirits on top. And it was just this absolute crutch that I had to lean on. And I never thought I could get out of that place. I just thought it was who I was and where I was going to stay. So it's interesting how we've all got these really different sort of drinking styles. But at the end of the day, we were all addicted to that same substance.
Mm. And it's interesting, Ben, isn't it? Because for you, you actually had a seizure, didn't you, when you gave up?
Yeah. I mean, just touching on those points that we just had, what intrigues me is how, my people had, I pride myself on my work, and now I'm doing it better than ever. Now I'm sober. My career has always been something I'm focused on. Yet, like you guys say, your career stopped you from entering that zone of that inability not to work. Yet actually the thing that I took pride in the most got wiped away. I mean, I was drinking vodka at 7 a.m. on the tube into work, and it's like, looking back, that just, I can't believe I did it, number one. But, it's just fascinating to hear different walks of life and how, a career kind of kept your brain in that sober element, yet mine just went out the window. And I find it fascinating to, almost how it metastasizes in different people almost. Mm. And yet mine led to seizures. So after I actually had a bit of a, what do you call them, intervention, if you will. My girlfriend at the time called my parents and said, Ben's got a drinking problem. I actually don't want him in my house anymore. I got whisked away. Long story short, I lived in Nottingham for 2 months. My mum just said, look, Ben, we need to sort this out. You're going through a rough patch. She didn't have an idea of the problem then. And I said, it's all right, I'll just stop, not knowing the dangers. And 16 hours after my last drink, I just hit the floor in the middle of a Nottingham town centre at a bus stop. I then came to, and then 3 minutes later, I had another one once my brain had gone, oh, you haven't fed me yet. And bang, I hit the floor again. And it's what the story that I always start with, I'm going a bit on a tangent here, but to kind of tell everyone, how this is the one story that really kind of pictures how gripping this thing can be. Is after those seizures, I was in hospital for 4 days. And after day 1, my brain just went, I know you're hooked up to IVs. I know you're getting an emergency detox, but actually something's more important. And I ran across a motorway, half in a hospital gown, after pulling IVs out my arm, to get to a spa shop to buy a litre of vodka and a litre of gin to put in my hospital water jug so I could sit there drinking. It's like, I'm a 27-year-old who's just had withdrawal seizures.
Yeah.
And it's mad. Isn't that mad? That I was there 18 months ago?
Yeah.
I think it is, but and I think that's it's hard for me to articulate this actually. But I think the fact that you were drinking so regularly, and maybe not necessarily in a worse way than any of us, just in a different way, but binge drinkers in a way, you kind of have a lot in one go, but then your body gets used to not having any for a few days, and then so you maybe don't suffer the same withdrawal symptoms as somebody who's drinking even moderate amounts every day and then suddenly stops. I know firsthand, but one of my family members had a massive seizure in the same way through just putting it out, and the same mentality was then trying to get out of hospital to get a drink. In fact, your story just was like, oh my God, it just took me back a second, because I really did feel like it was a story that I knew, but yeah, it's not that uncommon, I don't think.
William, do you know about that side? Because I was drinking a litre of vodka a night and I just stopped and I didn't have any withdrawal symptoms at all.
So my understanding, and Ben, jump in, I might have got this wrong, but the seizures, as I understand it, are quite, I've forgotten the word for it now. What are the seizures you have? Epilepsy. So there are things that can make epilepsy much worse and make you much more likely to have seizures, and that's lack of sleep, and I forget the other ones, but various things, all of which is caused by heavy drinking. So what you can sometimes get is someone who has epilepsy, but it's just under the radar. It just never actually manifests itself, and the drinking is what sets it off. So funny enough, I was talking to someone recently and he did something similar to you, Dave. He quit totally from drinking quite a high level. Now, he spoke to someone in the alcohol liaison unit, and they basically said, even though he was drinking at a very high level, they said you were fine, but they went back and checked that he had no family history of epilepsy. And that's what the seizures are. So if you have got zero epilepsy in your family, you'll probably be advised to go ahead with it. And actually, it tends to be a bit of a bone of contention, because I think among the recovery community, and you see it quite a lot, people will be drinking 2 or 3 glasses of wine a night, and people will be jumping in saying, well, you need to taper. But tapering is extremely difficult. It's much easier to stop dead, because when you start drinking, you're kicking off the withdrawal. So you're making it a lot harder. And actually, the seizures are one thing, but what is actually can be fatal is DTs. And that's really what people are thinking about as it being life-threatening. Now, actually, DTs are extremely rare, and they only affect, I think, 5% of the very most chronic alcoholics. And you have to be drinking for like a decade or more at a really high level to stand any chance of suffering from DTs.
It makes sense that, William, because the person that I'm talking about was told, once you've had one seizure through quitting alcohol, and I don't know if you were told the same, Ben, you're more likely to have seizures going forwards unless you stop drinking altogether. I don't know whether you were told the same.
Yeah, I mean, the problem was when I was discharged from hospital, because I drank in the middle of my detox, I was actually told to continue drinking. Well, that's how I took it at the time, because the doctor said I was 100% likely to seize again if I stopped, and they were unsure if my body could take it again. So I was advised to carry on and then seek professional help, because it could have led to DTs, it could have led to further seizures. Every time your body shuts down, it's not good for your brain. I mean, I was in heavy psychosis as it was. I didn't actually know where I was for those 4 days. So yeah, I think it's incredibly dangerous, and it's something that people need to be aware of, because I wasn't aware of it. So
Ben, I'm really interested to know, because like you said, you went out and got that drink. What was the turning point for you when you actually decided, I don't want this anymore?
So after I came out of hospital, it was about 2 months later when I hit that point. And to be honest, it was mostly the physical pain I was in. I remember sitting up at my dad's at my bed, and I was reaching out for that wine that I kept by my bed for the morning. And it was just this, I don't know what came over me. It's like sharp pains wherever. It was like rolling around on glass. And I tried to put it in my body, and it just came back up. And I tried again. And I was used to that happening for the first 10 minutes in the morning. That would always happen. That's why I'd always have my first drink in the shower, funnily enough, because then I'd have to clean up. But
Wow.
for like an hour, and I was like, something's not right here. And I just felt, and then the anxiety kicked in, of course, because I couldn't put booze in my body, but I knew I needed it. It was this horrible place. I remember I finally got some in, and then I just knew something had to change then. And I very seldomly called my therapist and walked downstairs to my dad and said, something's got to give, because I honestly felt like I think at the same time I was scared of seizing at that point as well. I had this, when I was admitted to rehab, they noted in massive letters on the top of my form that my biggest anxiety was seizing.
Right.
That mixture of everything took me to breaking point, and I just cried for 3 hours and made the call, really. And I was in there then, I think 2 days later. So yeah.
It's mad, isn't it?
Quite a story. I feel a bit lost for words. It's also like you said, even the 4 days of psychosis, you would not believe how on par your story is with the person I know. It's actually the same. It's exact. I can't believe it. I'm in shock.
When you stopped then, Ben, what was it like at the beginning? Because I know we have lots of people in the Sober Sessions group that haven't yet made that step. And they can be scared of the unknown sometimes, of what it's going to be like. So what was the first few weeks like for you when you decided to stop?
So, I mean, I guess it's a bit different for me, because I spent 7 weeks in treatment. So obviously my first 7 weeks were very, very managed. But I take things from that. I mean, yes, if you're as heavy a drinker as I was, or you're a constant drinker, you're going to have withdrawals. And I'm not going to lie, they're hell. But you get through it, and as long as you have the mindset to get through it, you will. I mean, gates were open at any point. I could have walked out, but there's something inside you once you've made that conscious switch that you just have to keep that fire alive. And to be honest, once you're into day one, you don't want to move at all. You're literally stuck to a bed. So there's that. So that kind of helps. But I just remember thinking immediately, it was like, even though I was stuck in this bubble, the 16-bedroom unit, I just remember feeling the biggest freedom I've ever felt in the last 10 years. Even though my day was scheduled minute by minute by minute, I just, inside me, I had this thing where I was just like, I'm not relying on anything. I'm not, it's hard to describe it. It just felt like the talons had been lifted, and all of a sudden I could talk and laugh, and actually laugh with people that, this actually, to be honest, the strangest group of people I've ever been in my life. Laughing, and my parents came to visit every weekend, and it was like I was their son again, to be honest. It was like I was me again, and it took a while to get to this point, and it's taken a lot of work, and it's a slow journey. It's not, people talk, I think, people talk about their brilliant sober lives, and it is true, but I think don't be discouraged that the first few weeks might be, but you will get there. And
it's not even the first few weeks, because when we met, and I hope it wasn't because of that, but just after you sort of had a real dip, didn't you? And I find that sometimes it's up and down, but also life is like that. And there's no magic cure to giving up. It's not like, I've given up alcohol and everything goes away. In fact, a lot of the time you get more problems because you're thinking about everything, but you still have the mood swings, don't you? And you did kind of crash just after that, didn't you?
Yeah, I think, part of the journey at the very beginning is learning to do everything again. And those experiences, the bigger things like loss, sure, but the tiny things like you've just been shouted at by a manager, you've had a shit day, or whatever that may be, you're learning to do everything again. I mean, dating was a huge thing for me. Trying to get that enjoyment out of another human was like a whole, chapter in itself. The ups and downs come, and I think because we've had such what we think is euphoric things in the past by getting absolutely slammed.
Yeah.
When I was on a high from meeting you for the first time, when you kind of come back home and you let that drop down, it's like, oh, and then
He's not like I thought he was. He's an absolute dickhead.
Either way.
I guess, you know, like with all of us here, sat here, we've all had a day one. Everyone has had the day one. And I can really relate to what you're saying about day one. But you've had kind of 2 day ones, because you had your day one in rehab and then your day one in the real world. What was that like, that transition?
It was interesting because you learn to feel after 7 weeks in this bubble. It's like, right, this is my safe zone. And then, of course, you're going out in the world with triggers, with friends, with everything else. But, and this is, you know, you have to feel armed and ready. And, you know, I think people should take as much time as they want in their own home before navigating it. And the people around them need to be okay with that. I actually, at the end of 4 weeks, I chose to extend by 3 weeks because I knew I just wasn't ready. And as much, I mean, I was due to get out on Christmas Eve of all time. So I wanted to get home to my family and have Christmas and pretend like I'd started this new life, but my head just wasn't there. And I felt like I was strong enough to kind of go back into the world, but I did it very staged. So I kind of started out by going places with my parents, with my mum, because she was safe. I knew that. Then I created friends. And, you know, again, it would be easy to sit here and say, life just happened and bloomed and everything else. But it was a very staged process. I mean, I'm only living back in London now, you know, for the first time since my sobriety for the last 2 months. And it's taken me 1.5 years to get to the point where I can live here full time. But now it's like I've moved to a whole new city, you know. So yeah.
Simon, did you, when you gave up drinking, did you have a few attempts at it?
Yeah, I had loads of day ones, but I could never get past literally 1 or 2 days, and that was as far as I would go. Or I'd convince myself today was going to be day one, and then I'd just drink in the evening. I just never ever got any sort of distance. So it wasn't like I had 3 weeks alcohol free and then I drank again. It was literally, you know, through the day, and then I'd either drink the next day or drink later on the day where I decided I was going to quit. And I just kept going round and round in this circle of sort of in the morning, yep, today's the day, this is it. And then later that night, no, the wine's open again. But I've, you know, Ben mentioned mindset shifting. You know, that was the absolute key for me when I really sort of got excited about what an alcohol-free life would look like, and expanded my knowledge about how good life would be and what a good fit I felt that was for me. And the more I learned, the more hungry I became for it. And that it was really when that mindset shifted that I got through the first day, the second day. And then once I got through a couple of days, that was it. I was never looking back again.
I think we've talked about the all or nothing thing in people, that, you know, we were never people that would sip a drink. It was, do you know what I mean? And sometimes, like for me, it was like all or nothing. I either do it or I don't. And I don't know if you guys are the same.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we've talked about this before, haven't we? We're all like, you know, Lisa will say as well, me and her finish our drink before most people are taking a sip out of theirs. It's, you know, I think that's the commonality, isn't it? There's somebody on Facebook actually who said that they've had a really good day yesterday, and then they're having it's Nicola, and she said they've had she's feeling low today, not low enough to drink, but feeling meh and lonely. And I think that's just important to draw on. That's common to everybody's journey as well, isn't it? You're not, once you stop drinking, you're not constantly on a high, are you? You are up, down. And those downs, even though they might be over little things,
yeah,
at first, particularly, they're much harder to deal with, aren't they? Does everyone agree with that those downs, they can be really like, oh my God, I've never felt this raw before. I've never felt this exposed. And you don't know what to do. You've never put anything other than alcohol in the toolbox to deal with those lows.
Yeah.
It's like learning to be an adult all over again, isn't it?
What's interesting as well is that Nicola's said, you know, I'm not low enough to drink. And I'm kind of thinking, so how low do you have to be? Like for me, I wouldn't drink. No, I kind of think of the worst case scenario of perhaps losing a loved one or something horrific like that. And I just genuinely feel that alcohol would not help the situation no matter what it was. So, yeah, there might be some, you know, exploring your mindset and looking at whether you still hold a belief that actually alcohol would help me in a bad situation. Well, how would it help? You know, dig into that and explore it, because that's an interesting statement.
Yeah,
that I'm low enough to drink.
I get it though, because you know, like obviously we all know my story. A month ago, I went through a miscarriage, and had that happened to me, I'll be dead straight. A month into my sobriety, I don't know what I'd have done.
Yeah.
It's happened to me 12 months in, and yeah, you're right. I'm like you, Simon. There's nothing that I can't picture anything bad enough to make me go for a drink, because it would make it worse. But I do think a lot of it is about building resilience. So it'd be interesting to see how far she is into a journey, because if you don't physically have those tools in your toolbox to know, right, I can draw on this experience, or you only know what you know, don't you? You know, like if you've no coping strategy for dealing with grief, loss, or whatever, except drink, it's really hard to do that on your own.
I've followed Nicola's journey right from the beginning, and she's incredible. I just think you're having a bad day today, and you get over it, and that's what part of the strength building, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
I think
Ben,
you
you've
learn-
had lots of them, haven't you? Really, you know. I mean, you're just after me, aren't you? I think you were 500 days. You just when you went into rehab, wasn't it? That's you 7 weeks ahead of me, I think.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, that, because talking about the highs and lows and stuff, and you know, like Simon said, it's, you know, about fearing that those super low points and stuff. And the question I get asked a lot is, you know, you're only 28, so you know you've got you know however long I'm going to live for, but it's going to be a long time sober. And it's, you know, a question I get asked is like, how are you going to go through adult life? Like, what are those times going to be, or how do you feel about that? And the truth is, I am anxious, you know, because I actually haven't had a very, you know, I haven't lost someone really close to me, and I haven't gone through certain things that a lot of people I talk to have. And so it does make me nervous, but I'm with Simon on that. Like, what is that low? I don't think there is one for me. You know, I've discovered what my lowest of lows is. And I think there's a real difference between being at peace with where you were and fully accepting. And I think once you accept where your lowest point was, you know that A, you never want to go back there, and B, you never want to find out what will take you there. And it's all in your own mindset and not letting yourself get there. Like, you know, the worst thing could happen to me, but I wouldn't let it take me to that point, because I can't think of anything worse than reliving it, really. And
sometimes it is a case of just rocketing through those hard days, isn't it? I've felt myself at times since I stopped drinking on days just thinking, I don't know what to do about this. Okay, well, I'm just not going to drink. I don't know what to do, but I'm just not going to drink. And sometimes it can be like that. And I think that, you know, as much as you work on your mindset, sometimes you do white knuckle. I think you do.
Yeah, I mean, I walked across Wandsworth Common the other night, and ironically, the pub was on the telly. They'd just opened for takeouts, and the Common was like an open-air concert. There was thousands of people. And as William says, it's quite often the fantasy of me going to the outside bar, getting a big pint plastic thing, sitting amongst all these people and thinking, oh, this is a reward for being in 12 weeks of lockdown. Things are getting back to normal. Life's getting back. We can tune out to it. And it's rubbish, because it's not like that. And, you know, I do get worried sometimes about, you know, what if, but it lasts literally minutes, you know, and it's just the imp of the mind that is my worst nightmare of, God, I could just ruin every single thing that I've built up and achieved from being sober in 1 minute, you know. But I think that's quite normal.
I'm interested to know, Ben, what is socialising like for you now? What kind of things do you do now instead of drinking?
Go to the woods.
It's a hard question because we've just had lockdown, so maybe what is it going to look like? Or we get asked this all the time, what do you do if you're not drinking? So what do you do?
To be honest, there hasn't actually exactly the same, just more present. I think a big thing for me was almost when I came out, it was proving that I could have the life that I had. I mean, I remember, and you know, I don't know if I recommend this in any way, but when I first came out, I would purposely challenge myself. So I'd go to the pub to watch football with my friends, and I'd push myself to just try and be like, yeah, I can do this. And, you know, sometimes I had to leave. And I think that's the key is I personally did everything I used to do, but there was always a point where I'd go, if I feel like this, I'm out the door. And I stuck to that. And eventually that time has eked out longer and longer and longer. You know, the first time I remember watching a game, I was there about half an hour before I was like, I'm out. And then it was an hour, and then it was 2 hours. And you know, there's still things that I'm coming to terms with today, like family barbecues. And, you know, I don't know why, but the outdoors and summer is just the biggest thing for me. And the last family party, I lasted about an hour, you know, but that's okay, because I knew when to quit. I knew when to go. It's all right, I can go now. Some people like to avoid wet places, and, you know, I guess that's up to them. But I personally needed to feel like I was still living and actually living those things better. That's what
Somebody on Facebook's asked a question relating to this. So Colette says, have you found that because you're young, you've come up against resistance from your peer group? Not that we don't all get that, but she's curious about different age groups.
I cleared a lot of friends out when I kind of went sober. And I know, you know, a lot of people say this, I think you have to. Yeah. There has been times when friends of friends, when I've been at birthdays and stuff, will go, oh, come on, that was just a phase. I've had the line, oh, you just hit it hard the last 4 years, man up, you know. And it does come a bit stronger because I am younger. I think there's a stigma around. People don't realise, you know, you have to be a bit older, no offence, guys, but you have to be a bit older to go down that road of addiction, and you don't, you know. It hit me when it started when I was 21. You know, this has been going on for 5, 6, 7 years. But yes, the short answer is yeah, there has been kind of pushbacks, but that's why you just got to be strong enough where you are. And, you know, I almost take it when people have that, it's almost like a challenge on me to go, no, I'm the strongest I can be here. You're the weak one for trying to go against my beliefs, or, you know.
Yeah. Hey, Dave, do you, well, all of you actually, if you could have stopped drinking in your 20s, knowing what you know now, would you have done?
I don't think so personally, because my drinking was a little bit, I was quite a sociable drinker in my 20s. I consider it, I used to be a heavy drinker, but I never drank indoors. It was always out with the lads, clubbing, where's them, pulling, you know, all that stuff. It was when I was in my 30s and I started going to a local pub, and then I became a regular. And then I adopted the nickname Glugs because I could down 5 or 6 pints in an hour after work.
What we should have called you, Alex.
Yeah. Yeah. But then I moved from that area and then I started to drink indoors. And so if I was to put a time on it, I would probably say in my mid-40s that if I could have nipped it in the bud then, I'd have had another year or so. No, another 10 years.
What about you, Simon?
I don't think I would have listened. I did an Instagram post which said, what would you say if you could go back and talk to your younger self? And I thought, oh yeah, I'd go back and say, don't drink, it's going to ruin your life, and you know, don't be a people pleaser, do this, do that. I wouldn't have listened. I was, like Dave said, I was too interested in partying. I mean, I had hair back then, so it was, you know, the world was a different place.
It was warmer.
Is your dad still selling pictures?
Yeah, he's setting up a website.
Oh, great.
What about you, William?
I think if I knew then what I knew now, I probably wouldn't have drunk, because really I feel like now I choose not to drink. I've just got no interest in it. Whereas for a lot of years, it was kind of the centre of my life in many ways. But yeah, I genuinely, if I had this knowledge back in my teens, I don't think I would have ever drunk at all, to be honest. Although saying that, I think it is harder, because going back 20 odd years, there was much less of a sober movement than there is now.
Yeah.
You almost, I mean, it's difficult now. You do feel slightly ostracised, but even more so, 25 years ago. But no, I genuinely think if I had the knowledge I had now and the understanding I had now, I wouldn't have drunk.
I've got two perspectives on it, Lisa. I think in honesty, looking back now, and maybe it is a bit fantasizing as well, I wouldn't change my 20s because I enjoyed them looking back. I had a good time. But I also really wish I could have experienced my youth sober, because I'm having such a good time now.
Yeah.
just know that if you could have gone back and done that through your 20s and 30s, the opportunities open to you as a young person anyway in life, and then having those opportunities with a sober mind and with clarity, I reckon I'd be like a rocket scientist or something.
I think I'd have loved to have done it. I see people like your age, Ben, and think, oh my God, I'd love to have stopped at that age. I just think I'd have had more respect for myself. I'd have had, like, I'm more confident now than I've ever been. And people used to think I was confident, but I wasn't. I had like a social anxiety, and I'd had that from being a teenager. And I just think all the things I've experienced in the last 2 years, if I'd have started at 28, like, it'd have been just amazing, I think it's dead exciting.
It's a gift,
Ash on
isn't it?
Facebook has said something as well. He said, and it's really nice this, I turned 30 last year. I am now at 190 days alcohol and drug free. I had a heavy partying decade. What started off as normalised heavy drinking on uni nights out and lads' holidays soon progressed to raves and day using drinking on my own up until my late 20s. I realised I needed to get clean after ending up in hospital last year. I owe my progress to my missus, who was stuck with me through the supported me unconditionally. It's reassuring to hear stories of addiction and dependence from a young man like you. Many thanks. That's nice.
Oh, that gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, to feel like you're inspiring somebody, other people at your own age must be like.
He's, I said to him earlier, he's a huge ambassador for sobriety, because, you know, what you put out there, Ben, your blog is absolutely fantastic. It's so honest. Beyond the bottle, if everyone wants to write that down, it's great. I've got a question for you, Ben. So you've got your lovely lady playing with the bloody cat behind you, which put me off for the whole thing.
Yeah, I've been watching that.
I've been watching the cat.
Only 10 weeks. She didn't know any better. I did tell her.
Well, I can tell her, look. She doesn't drink, does she? No. So obviously that helps you, doesn't it? Because my Emma said to me the other day, and I don't know where it come from, maybe she's going to give me the elbow. She said, if you met someone else, would they be sober? And I actually said, yeah. If it ever happened, I would go out with a sober person. So, for different reasons. So that must help you. Interesting for you, Lisa, because you're dabbling in the field at the moment. But
well, I've given up on that now. I've given up.
Went on one date and said, I'm not doing this. It's shit.
Yeah. But Ben, that must be a huge help for you and the support there, because would you have, if she was a light drinker, would things be the same for you in your relationship? Well,
So to be clear, she's not sober like us, but she just doesn't drink. It's not something she never has. I mean, I'm sure, I don't think she minds me saying, but there was an experience in the past which just led her not to enjoy it as much as others. And actually, to be honest, I didn't know that when we first started dating. I think looking back, I was open to possibly, you know, if someone liked to drink, I would just have to be a separate part of that. And I kind of became okay with that. But actually, looking back now on what we have now and how our relationship is constructed with her not drinking and living in a sober house and all this, I wouldn't go back. I don't think I'd be able to go back. It's actually kind of gone against what I thought I could do, and actually I've gone the other way now. I think it's everything to have your partner sport, and big congratulations to that comment we just had. You know, I think you need a rock, whatever that may be, and you can't be afraid to lean on it. You know, and having that person is everything. It's not to say you can't do it on your own, but finding common ground with someone is huge.
And I think that's why things like this are so important, because not every person has a person in their life sober. So a community to fall back on, or any form of, you know, the Quitlet even. Some people just rely on their Quitlet and their podcasts. And like you say, any form of feeling like you're belonging to a certain circle is supportive. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, massively. I mean, I actually, you know, when lockdown came in, I'm not afraid to say it, I was living a very, very lonely life. Emma works for the NHS. She was out all day, every day, different hours. I was just here, and it was lonely. And to be honest, it's not really been that long that I've engaged with this community. And it really has just added a spirit to my sobriety that I just can't believe I didn't do, like, you know, 18 months ago. there's always someone to talk to, and that's what I love about it. You know, I mean, the amount of messages I just have with people on the constant, and we just check in and just have a call once in a while. And it's beautiful. There's enough people out there, and everyone, you know, me putting out, like Dave said, just putting out my blog and stuff. I'm trying to show that relationship with any age, across anywhere, with anyone. There's always someone.
And
Do you think your blog's massively helped, Ben? Like, I know when I first stopped drinking, I was a bit of an open book on my personal Instagram at the time. And because I had nobody about, there was literally nobody I knew sober. And it was a really, really lonely place to begin with. So I kind of used my Instagram as a bit of a diary, really. And that's how I kind of got to meet other people. But just getting it out and being really truthful must really help you in a way, I suppose.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I come at it, you know, people often ask why didn't I start it earlier and kind of keep a live thing rolling, but it took me, you know, it's taken me this long to be strong enough to dive back into those things, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I try, as Dave said, you know, some of it is quite harsh, and people have messaged me and said that triggered me today, and you know, whether that's seen as a good thing or a bad thing, but it's about making those relationship points, and it helps me enormously. I'd say it helps me arguably more than maybe other people, because it lets them out, and you can just be honest on a page. And you know, when you've got no one to outwardly speak to, sometimes that can be just as well. I mean, I remember saying to her, she said, "Why are you doing this?" I said, "Mum, it's like a therapy session outside a therapy session. Yeah. It's when you don't have anyone, don't be afraid to talk to yourself. You know, that's but it's true."
Yeah, definitely. I used to get posts that are like people would say, "Oh my God, that's really inspired me today." And what I were really doing is I were having a word with myself. So if it was like, do you know what I mean? Like, I can't even think of the posts that I used to put up, but they were always like really inspiring. And now I look back on it, I was like, God, you were a good therapist to yourself, Lisa.
Like when we write in them, you know, when I say outwardly, you know, be proud of ourselves, be that, I'm actually saying that to myself. I'm like, yeah, remember that today, you know.
You journal, don't you, Simon?
Yeah, I've got a blog on my website, rather like Ben. I don't update it quite as much as I'd like to, but certainly over the first year of sobriety, exactly like Ben said, it was almost like your own personal therapy session. I was writing things, I was having breakthroughs as I was writing, and not only did they help me, they seem to have helped other people. I think it's a wonderful thing to do, and I encourage people I coach to, even if they set up a private blog that no one else can see, obviously keep a paper journal. I think it's an absolutely critical part of the process.
William, did you feel like that when you wrote your book?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I found it quite cathartic, to be honest, and I wasn't expecting to. I kind of wrote it because I thought I had knowledge of information that would help people and a different perspective that would help people, but I really didn't want to write it. I couldn't be bothered. I put it off for ages and ages, and eventually got round to it. But I think it did me a lot of good to do it, because I thought I had a fairly coherent and complete picture, but when I actually started to write it down, I realized there was holes in it. There was things that didn't quite fit together. So I think it kind of solidified things in my mind a lot as well. I found it really useful to write.
That's a really interesting point, actually, is that holes, finding those holes, because by exploring deeper into your own self, I actually realized how much I don't remember. And doing it at this point proved to me how strong I had to be, because I've had to ask my mum a lot about those 2 months when I was back. I mean, I was blacking out multiple times a day. And I got in fights with hospital staff, and I was actually locked in a room, and all these things are coming at me. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize I was that bad. But it can be difficult, but it also helps you give a bigger picture of your past to be able to accept it and move on. And I think that was key with me, is there was a lot of things I just don't remember. And it's been a journey to remember those, be at peace with those, and accept those. And I know I wouldn't be sitting here as strong if I didn't know those almost in the past, if that makes sense.
Ben, when would you say, in terms of your age and point in your life, did the sort of switch flick from perhaps the standard teenager exploring alcohol to go into that next level? Was there a moment, or did it happen over a period of time?
It's such a hard question. it was kind of, I mean, it was just a slow incline. I mean, in my 20s, straight out of uni, I ran a pub and lived above a pub. That probably helped. I think drinking was just normalized the whole time. And from this, starting my career in a place where if someone buys you a beer, you drink it because you're running the place. You run into it. This is what you do. And then when I moved to London and started my career kind of in the marketing world, it's like there was nothing stopping that. Like drinking was working. So to me, when we went out for big boozes and stuff like that, drinking was already planted as a normal thing to do in everyday life. So people would have breaks and I'd be like, no, we just drink every day. Like obviously, from 18, that's just what was programmed in my head. I remember 2 times thinking this is a problem. One was when I flew to Germany to do some work with a company and I was drinking 2 liters of vodka in the hotel room and they were calling me out for doing everything wrong. And it was anyway, I ended up having to leave the job. And I remember looking for a job when I got back and I remember it was a really weird experience, but my screen went black on my computer and I saw myself and it was at 9 a.m. and I was drinking a gin and orange. And I just looked at myself and thought, what are you doing? Like, you've got no job. I'm not being funny. It's not cheap to live in London and your money's going down and you're sitting here drinking it. And how did I dismiss that? I brushed my teeth and had a glass of wine because I didn't want the orange to mix with the wine.
Oh, I bet that tasted horrible after brushing your teeth.
I know. I had this weird thing throughout my mixed drinks without brushing my teeth. That's
really?
The weirdest thing.
I mean,
because
I've got a good imagination. When people talk to me, I don't just listen. I'm there, me. I was at your computer screen. I saw you.
Yeah,
so,
I saw it.
So when he brushed his teeth and then drank, I'm like, ugh.
I can't drink coffee after I've brushed my teeth. I can only drink it before.
Fresh orange is the worst.
Yeah.
But I think,
here. Oh, go on, sorry, Ben, you first.
no, just to finish off, I think, Simon, it's really hard to identify that point because the fact of the matter is we all live in denial. And even when the intervention happened, where my parents came, one from Nottingham, one from Cambridge, came to my girlfriend's house to pick me up, and I was packing my stuff, drinking everything I could find, I still didn't think it was a problem. When I still didn't think it was a problem. I was like, it's a phase, because you believe it's a phase and one you're going to magically come out of, but you don't. And
it's like you say, you justify that phase as well, don't you? So, oh, well, it's because I've had a bad day at work, or, oh, it's because I'm going out for a party, so it's okay to have 2 bottles of wine before I go out. It's not only about the belief you haven't got a problem, it's the constant justifying that you do.
Knackering, isn't it? The constant thinking.
It's bloody exhausting, yeah.
We were talking last week, Ben, about what we do instead of drinking, and if somebody asked if we've transferred our addictions, and I know like Simon and I were saying we work a lot more. Have you done anything like that? Have you transferred it to anything, do you think?
I think that was one of the biggest things they taught us in rehab, was that transference, and so to really try and manage it. The problem that I have is I've still got the same brain. So I've still got a very, very obsessive brain with things. So mine's not necessarily that I transferred my addiction to something else. It's more that I have to try and manage my obsessions. So I have short bursts of obsession. And it's something I'm actually discovering a lot about with my therapist at the moment is I'm a smoker and I have these time frames just like my drinking. So if I don't smoke 45 minutes before I get into bed, if it's 46 minutes, I'm out for another. It has to be. And it's trying to break those obsessive compulsions, which is just what I have in my drinking. If there was an hour, unless I was shaking, they would be on the hour every hour, because drinking doesn't become fun. It becomes a routine. It's what you have to do. So I haven't really transferred it, but it definitely applies to many things that I do now, 100%. And I can see it as well.
Oh, it's interesting.
Some people need that. I mean, I was attending this group in Clapham, and there was a guy there who was in the military, like you, William, and his recovery was based about routine. Everything had to be routine. And I found out during lockdown that he had relapsed, and it really didn't surprise me, because his routine went out the window. And it sounds to me like you, that you have to keep to these certain things in order to stay the way you are. It's fascinating hearing, isn't it, how we all got our different techniques, and which goes back to our routines of drinking and stuff like that. And I was saying to you, I think, Lisa, that with mine, I had to get absolutely everything done before I'd had that first drink.
Yeah.
I couldn't have any phone calls. I couldn't have any emails. I just wanted to think, right, I'm off now. But once that first millimetre of drink hit my lips, I was gone. That was it. I wasn't answering the phone. I used to make excuses. I mean, Em used to say when we weren't living together, oh, shall I ring you when I've put the kids to bed? And I was like, no. No, because you won't understand me. You will have no idea what I'll be talking about. And it's sad. But I used to do it every night.
But routines are important in sobriety as well, aren't they? I mean, you know, you talk about obsessive routines in drinking, but like Lisa and I were talking today, actually, you know, if she doesn't meditate, it impacts on it. If I don't exercise, I'm in a bad way for days. So I think there's an element of whatever your routine is. I mean, some people say it might be, you know, addiction transference. I can get addicted to exercise at times. I go through phases of being absolutely addicted to it. But is that not just part of being human as well? You know, that need to feel fulfilled and that need to release endorphins, and however that happens, surely, you know, we're all creatures of habit, and we thrive best when we know what's going to happen next, don't we?
Well, I think we're always looking for that hit of dopamine as well. I was talking to a guy this week. Funny enough, I was talking to him about my ADHD, and he was saying to me that people with a normal brain need, he calls them dopamine tokens. And he says an activity like exercising, you'll get 2 dopamine tokens for it. And generally, a normal person needs 8 to 10 a day, whereas someone with ADHD has got this massive gap and you need to fill it up. So I think you're right. As human beings, we're constantly seeking that next dopamine hit. And he did explain to me as well, because sometimes if someone's talking to me and I'm like, sometimes I'm just not interested and I zone out and I'm thinking of other things. And he said, your brain, Simon, you're constantly looking for dopamine. So if you think there's no dopamine here, you're just thinking about the next thing. And I think it happens with a lot of people. It's just we're constantly scanning for dopamine hits.
I call it wasp syndrome, Lisa, don't I?
Yeah, you always say I've got that.
You have. She's a wasp. Like, you'll be talking to her, and if she doesn't,
I get fed up.
Yeah, it's because of that.
She just changes the topic and just goes, no, I don't want to talk about that. I'll be seeing that fly out there.
Yeah, exactly that. You're scanning, and he said things are they either represent a threat to your dopamine intake, they're of no consequence, so you think of something else, or it's positive. There's dopamine here, do more of it, get obsessed with it. That's why we can't pull ourselves away from work at the end of the day, because we're drinking from this fountain of dopamine. And then someone says, come and have some dinner. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I'm filling up with dopamine. Thanks very much.
It's the same the other way then, isn't it? If you've got unanswered emails and you can see a notification on your phone, you need that cleared before you can relax, or that's impact.
Oh my God. Emma, she has when she plugs her phone into my car, all these red dots come up all over the screen. And I'm like, what is that? I have to obsessively. I haven't got one notification on my phone because it drives.
Lisa.
But William, about the dopamine thing. I mean, I attended a seminar with Jolene Park, who talks a lot about diet and stuff like that. So I think someone on here, well, a couple of people have said actually about getting a dopamine hit naturally. What do you say about that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Firstly, dopamine is something a lot of people talk about in relation to addiction, but it gets confused a lot with endorphins. So endorphins are what make you feel good. And I think up until fairly recently, they thought dopamine was similar, but now the thinking is dopamine's actually, it triggers you to want to do stuff. So there's just a slight difference there between the two of them. What most people are after is actually endorphins, which make you feel good. So the things that you do get endorphins from are eating, exercise, eating when you're hungry and you need nutrition, not overeating, exercise, sex, and socializing. And I think that's one of the, I've mentioned this a few times, but that's one of the problems people get in when they stop drinking and they say they miss that wonderful high of alcohol. what it actually is, there's two reasons we enjoy alcohol. Firstly, because it disrupts our brain chemistry, and then you need more of it to get back to feeling normal. That's for regular drinkers. But a lot of the time, the supposed high you get from drinking isn't actually alcohol at all. It's endorphins you get from socializing. And that goes back to where we tend to drink. So we tend to drink in social situations when we're relaxing and getting endorphin buzz anyway. And something that, I mean, Annie Grace says about it a lot as well, but someone posted in the Alcohol Explained Facebook group the other day, where a friend of theirs was, I can't remember what they were doing, they were moving away or going on somewhere for an extended period, and they were emptying their fridge out, and there was 2 alcohol-free beers. So this person's quit drinking for, I don't know, 6 months or something, and they had these 2 alcohol-free beers, and they were sat there drinking one of them. And they were kind of subconsciously thinking, oh, I don't know what this is, it tastes a bit peculiar. And then they started to feel a bit weird, and how they described it was they just sort of felt a bit dulled and a bit unpleasant. And when they looked at it, it was normal beer. But actually, that's the reality of drinking. It's not that great feeling we get. It is literally a foul taste and then a slightly strange feeling of being dulled. And the actual alcohol high that we think about and the endorphins actually doesn't come from the alcohol at all. It comes from a completely separate situation.
I read that. Was it somebody in your group, that, William? I'm sure it was
Yeah,
in your
yeah.
group. Yeah, I read it in your group, and it reminded me very much of when Annie did she does a full video on after she'd done like a year, I think. So was it a year, Simon? She'd done a year?
I think it was after about 30 days.
It was a long time. It was
She
a long
drank a bottle
period
of wine,
sober,
didn't
and
she?
then she deliberately drank. And I was like, oh my God, how would you do that? But she just did it to see what impact it would have on her own, and found that actually she just felt like crap. She didn't like it.
But
Yeah,
she
that's the thing.
did
The majority
no
of
external stimulation. There was no music, no TV, just her and a bottle of wine, wasn't it? And a video
Yeah,
camera.
really powerful video.
It's
actually.
quite traumatic to watch.
Yeah, because you see her go from like a bubbly, fresh-looking person into quite drunk, really.
Yeah.
So Ben, what have you got in the future for you now? Are you living day to day, or what's in plan for Ben Robinson now?
Stay sober, number one.
Good plan, Ben.
It's just been a strange time, isn't it? I mean, to be honest, most of people ask me what do I enjoy most about it, and the biggest thing I enjoy most is planning for the future, but actually meaning it.
Yeah.
Actually being able to say, yeah, I do want to go away next year, and actually, making it, because, they used to call me a jokester with plans. I'd never do anything. I'd say I'd I'd plan the world and not do a fucking minute of it. But it's just being able to do that. And, this is a strange time, and I'm coming, we're slowly coming out of this now. And I think the next few months for me is almost acclimatizing again. What I felt recently is a very similar bubble to what I was in rehab. I've created a safe environment where there's no triggers, there's no pubs, there's no, annoying friends kind of, or their mates making fun of me and all this. I've just created a little bubble. So it's almost, I feel a bit like I'm going to start going out into the world again and reliving that moment when I walked out the rehab doors. But it's just one that's met with positivity this time, It's very simple to go, well, I did it once, I can do it again. And that's the truth, but it doesn't make it any less scary. So,
you know what I think is that for us who are already sober, it's less scary for a lot of people that have increased their drinking, because I think we've all agreed lately we're getting messages from people saying they're worried about what time of day they're starting drinking. They're worried that when they go back to work, it's how it's going to impact the fact they've got more responsibilities in that. And I know where I'd rather be right now, sober and with certain challenges of things. I mean, I walked down Northcote Road last night, and all the pubs, it was literally carnage. There was no social distancing or anything, and it didn't bother me, but I'm pretty much sure there's going to be a lot of really worried people, nervous people thinking, how am I going to get back to how things were before?
The thing is, Dave,
That's the
as
scary
well,
thing.
there's that excitement around social media, isn't there? A kind of like holiday feel around the pubs reopening again, and people are getting excited about it, and I think people that have been in this bubble are like, oh well, what am I going to do, because all my friends are going there or they're going here and I don't want to go, or they're not feeling the same. I just think it's a really difficult, it's just a really weird time.
But it's tough for both, isn't it? It's tough for the sober people who are now watching the world, and especially if they got sober in lockdown, they're now watching the world come back alive and thinking, oh my God, how will I cope in that world? I'm sober and I'm newly sober and I've not done it before. But also there's the people like you were saying, Dave, who've now, their drinking has gone to next level drinking and they don't know how to reduce and stop it. And if you don't mind, I think there's a really good question here that's related to it, not directly with lockdown, but this is from Julia. Good to see you all. Great to meet Ben. Mindset is key. Simon was spot on how critical it is. I am happily alcohol-free 16 months and need to find a way to explain to others clearly why I am so strongly convinced that I won't ever drink again. Is leading by example enough, or is there a really good way to describe the sheer freedom of a sober life? I have a few friends trying to go sober who are on week 1, and I'd love your thoughts on how to change mindset. So I think that's going to be key going into the next weeks. How do we change mindset? I'm not answering it.
Well, my view on mindset is it's all about education. I mean, we start off, I mean, I've said this before, but we end up at a point where we've got this huge internal conflict going on. Conscious mind wants us to quit, subconscious wants us to carry on drinking, and it's about bringing the two into harmony with each other and knowing that you can never go back to that place of ignorant bliss that you were in before, because it no longer exists. So the only way out is to unite the two armies and move forward by educating your subconscious. And the more you learn, the more your subconscious soaks it up and the more they come in line with each other. I mean, talking to friends about it, it sounds like they're actually on the same page and they want to quit from what you've said. So I would hope that you can have some really awesome conversations with them and share everything you've learned. But I certainly wouldn't turn into a sober preacher if they're not open to listening and hearing what you've got to say. I think there's a fine balance there.
It's really hard, isn't it, when people want to go sober, they're seeing how well you're doing. You kind of want to inject everything that you've learned over this time into them, and you're like, well, you could read this and you can read that, don't forget to read this and log on to this and do this. There's so much, and I think that it's a process, isn't it? And when you're like, she sounds like she's just on a pink fluffy cloud at the moment and wants to spread the word, which is just fantastic, but like you say, it's hard to explain it to people
without
people watching. Sorry, well. Simon, go on. What was that, Simon? Sorry, I interrupted you then.
I was just saying, and also doing it without ramming it down anyone's throat.
Yeah.
I think just being open to people who want to talk to you without pushing it onto anyone is really important.
Yeah, and I think working on mindset, I said I wasn't going to answer it, but I will add to it. Working on your mindset, it can be the little things, can't it? Like I talked about earlier, the podcast, the books, the watching people's lives, the watching people's stories, reading of blogs. That's how your mindset changes, because we've said this before, but certainly for me, my mindset was starting to change long before I actually quit drinking. The curiosity is when your mindset is starting to change, when you're thinking, is this good anymore? Am I enjoying it anymore? That's already shifting in your mindset, right?
I think there's a big thing is like, I was talking to a chap the other week, and it's like, if you're apprehensive about stopping, it's like, why? Analyze those things. What's going to change if you stop? Why are you apprehensive to stop? Is it because you're scared that things won't be so fun? Or is it because and then that in turn actually highlights where you might be dependent on it to have those fun times, to have that anxious, that anxiety pushed down. And actually you're almost turning it on its head. So why don't you want to stop? Oh, actually you depend on it to get through that. And then if you then it might open a bigger picture on where your relationship sits with alcohol, to be able to move forward from that point and go, actually, I want to deal with anxiety in a different way. I want to deal with my fear of socializing in a different way, because actually the things that stop us are actually the things that we depended on. It sounds stupid, but I think when you think about it backwards, it can be quite a powerful thing.
Definitely. Is there any more questions, Alex?
There's a comment here that Well, there's two that are more like comments, but we might be able to discuss around them. I've got a bit of green-eyed monster when I see friends getting together and drinking, but I know I'm not like them. I can't have just one or two. I think that's quite an interesting statement. But that isolates me. Moving forward, I'm worried my circle is now so small I won't be invited to anything or get involved in social occasions because of it. I need sober friends and things to look forward to involving other people. That's from Nicola, and directly related to that from Annie. I'd love to see a session on coming out of lockdown and protecting our sober bubbles. Great session. I'm glad I found you guys. I mean,
but the only thing I say about that is that when I first became sober, as well, met William, I bit the bullet and went to a sober event, and I was petrified. And then, as I said to you a few times, but Ben doesn't know this, that I met so many nice guys, and I think since we've spoke, Ben, that it's almost introduced you to this side of life, and the amount of people, like-minded people from different backgrounds and whatever, that when we come out of this lockdown, I know I'm going to hold an event, and I know there's Club Soda. Alex, we met at the Mindful Drinking Festival. Simon was there. We didn't get to chat. But you get to know so many people, and you realise that the world is so full of people sharing the same experiences. And when you meet them, they're just the loveliest, kindest people. And I spoke to William, and I had a talk that week. He was actually on the stage talking about things. And I said, I've got this talk at the end of the week and I'm bloody petrified. And he was so calm and reassuring for me. And this was, I love you, William. He was so kind to me. And I met the Rock Sober boys, and they were lovely. And it makes you realise that there is a whole new world out there when you're sober. And even coming back on the tube, I was sitting there, everyone were like, wee, and I was like, I'm so glad I don't do that anymore. You know,
I think you've got to make the effort though, haven't you, Dave? I think you can't just sit there and expect it to happen. And I think if we're really honest, my social life has completely changed. I don't go out with people that I used to go out drinking with. And yeah, they don't invite me, and I don't really want to go even if they did. But you get to that point, and I think that's your biggest fear at first. It's like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do to socialise? Where will my friends come from? And it can be really scary. But I don't think there's any point in beating around the bush that if you want your sobriety, sometimes your social life has to change. And good friends, people that love you, people that want to spend time with you, will do. And if you've got these people like, oh, don't be so boring, come and have a drink, you can have one, you can do this, they've not got your best interests at heart. And I think it's important. Your sobriety has to be number one. And it really does.
And if they're the only people in your life, you know, those people, because I do honestly believe that some people just have those kind of friends. You know, they maybe haven't got one or two close friends or family members supporting them. But if they're the only people you've got, you do have to be brave and put yourself out there and try to meet new people. You know, groups like ours, there's loads of other accounts on Instagram where they're asking constantly where you're from. And that's how Lisa met two people that she's talked about this before. She set up Be Sober Manchester with, because she had nobody. So, and you know, honestly, I can vouch for this. Lisa is not somebody to put herself out there at all sober. She really is quite.
Well, it was awful. It was dead scary.
Yeah, and you know, she just responded or put herself out there and said, "I'm from Manchester," and you just have to be a bit brave, because you're not expected to go out and find brand new friends overnight. You won't want to anyway, but over time, things replace. It's like, you know, it's like changing school. When you're a kid, it's scary at first, and after a few months, you've got friends and new games to play, and you kind of look back and think, oh, that was nice about your old life, but you've got a new.
You know what else, Alex? I think it's important to know that it's all right to learn to be on your own as well, because that's a scary place for people. Like, I know I used to go out because I didn't know how to be in my own company. So if the kids weren't here and nobody was about, I was like, right, who can I go out drinking with? So I kind of found these drinking friends because I just didn't want to be on my own. So even learning to be on your own is a whole new thing, and it's okay to get bored, because I think that's when you start to find your creativity really, or find things that you really want to do. But learning to sit with yourself, especially if you've been in quite a bad place and you've got a lot of anxiety about what you've done or regrets, is quite difficult. But I think it's really important that it's all right to be on your own as well.
Just picking up on the point about, you know, being afraid you're not going to be invited to places is, you know, I've had that. And the thing is, I almost view it as a challenge because actually it's their mindset that needs changing, not yours.
Yeah.
You know, you're the stronger person, the better person, the funnier person, the bigger character. You are that person now, but they don't know that. And they're actually scared to be in an environment where they might feel vulnerable because they're the pissed up one in the corner. I remember one time, I was going to his birthday party and I was accidentally invited to the wrong group, and someone put in there, "Oh, is Ben coming because he's sober?" And instead what I did was hid myself, exited the group. And, you know, there's part of me at that point that says, okay, I'm vulnerable here. I'm like, my self-confidence is already at a low because I'm a new sober person. I was like, you know what? F them. I'm going to go. And just, there was a mindset in there that was like, I'm going to prove you're wrong. You think I'm going to be the dull of this? And we had an amazing time. And I did bring it up with the person outside very quietly on their own, didn't make a deal. And they said, look, I did see what you said. And I said, that was out of order. And he said, I'm so sorry. Like, I just didn't expect you to be the same. And I was like, that perception needs changing. And so anyone who's worried about inviting, go prove them wrong. That's what
Yeah, it definitely does. There's a lot of stigma attached to sobriety. And, you know, we say a lot, you know, the stigma, there should be no stigma around it because sober's a lifestyle choice. It doesn't mean that you're some down and out because you choose sober. And we've got to remove that somehow.
Exactly.
I think we are, though, you know, doing things like this, you know, holding social events and the Mindful Drinking Festival. It was absolute, you know, wasn't it, Alex? There were thousands and thousands of people there popping in and what they do, Club Soda, is great with Laura and stuff like that. It's just, I think in 5 years, it's going to be a bit like smoking, you know. Like, I hardly know anyone that smokes, literally, apart from Ben.
We'll change that, Ben. We'll
And your girlfriend's gone, Emma, where you gone? What is your relationship now with your mum like?
Mine? It's unreal, really, to be honest. I mean, we've always been close, and I'm not afraid to admit I've always been a mama's boy. And so for her seeing her only son take this turn of destruction was, no, I mean, it's interesting. My family's got a history of alcoholism, so it's actually interesting where I think some people that have got in touch, especially my age, have witnessed their parents turning their back on them. And I think that's, you know, a really difficult place. But I believe that's a complete lack of understanding. I'm very lucky that my parents understood the issue. But now it's nothing like I could have imagined, really. I mean, she's still my best friend. She always will be. But there's just this level that allows me to just talk to her at a deeper level. I mean, it's interesting. I've just kind of made peace with this, but my dad is someone who's a very analytical, not very emotional person. And I've always wanted to talk to him about this, but never been able to. And with my mum, I've kind of been at peace now that I can't do that with my dad and with my mum. And that's a very difficult place to sit because you want someone that you love so much to be proud of you. And I look up to my old man and stuff like that. But I think, you know, relationships can be deepened in some areas, but you have to be at peace. And I was upset with myself for a long time that I couldn't have the same thing with my dad. So now that's, you know, I accept that and allow those deeper relationships where you have them because they're a lot more beautiful than they ever were.
That's lovely to hear, isn't it? So you've got a couple of authors sitting here. And Simon, I will say, mate, with your backdrop, I keep moving my mouse to get
So you can change it if you want.
Ben, who's got his girlfriend Emma and the cat, you and the bloody fucking hand. Look,
you've nearly had my mum in the background today.
I know,
she's making a brew. She's walking round. She's locked the dog out of the living room. I'm like, mother.
I know, but Ben, your writing is fabulous. Do you think there's going to be a book in you?
I honestly don't. If someone said to me, you know, would you be considering a book, you know, at the beginning of this, absolutely not. But there is a bit of an urge to me, you know. I feel like, I mean, looking at this is probably a bit boring, but just blogs aren't as read as they used to be, you know. And yes, mine gets good reads, but the engagement isn't there. The engagement's in physical things nowadays. I think people like holding a book, so there could be, but I don't know yet.
Watch this space, eh?
Oh,
Question, everybody, and this is for everybody. So this is from Jan. How do you feel using any other mind-changing drugs to help you through the withdrawal? Some say it's good, some say it's swapping one drug for another, like sugar. I'll tell you how I feel about that. It depends. If you're talking about substituting alcohol for like cannabis, I don't think it's a good idea. But if you're talking about using medical drugs that have been proven to make the journey, the transition easier, and you can come off them safely, I think that if that's what's been recommended, that's what you should do. That's my opinion.
Yeah, so I was put on medical detox, and without it I wouldn't have gotten through them, and that's what I class as a helpful drug. For me, I mean, I've already said I'm obsessive, you know. I'm scared, not scared, scared's the wrong one. I'm apprehensive to even take paracetamol at the level I'm at, just because to me, anything to alter my mind or body right now puts me at risk of chasing. I know paracetamol's not going to make me high, but it's something altering something that I'm scared of to take me back to where I was. So, but I have heard of people using certain things, but I think if you know you've got an addictive tendency or obsessive personality, I just think it's not worth the risk.
Simon?
I agree.
Yeah, I don't know whether I'm best qualified to answer that, but I'm pretty much with what Alex and Ben have said. I think I certainly wouldn't look to use or turn to recreational drugs, but I know whoever wrote the comment mentioned sugar, and I often hear people saying about, you know, I'm eating a lot more cake or a lot more donuts, and I think cut yourself some slack in the early stages. It depends what we're talking about, because the questions is like medical drugs and also mention sugar. So I think there's sort of two sides to it, but certainly, yeah, I think it's quite common to develop a sweet tooth. The number of people I hear who say they develop an ice cream addiction after they quit is unbelievable. But, you know, cut yourself some slack and deal with that a little bit further down the line. As Alex said, if we're talking about recreational drugs, probably not the best solution, but something that has been prescribed or is fit for purpose, that's a whole different story.
Yeah, you never heard anyone with too much regret about insulting somebody after a bowl of ice cream, did you?
No. Haagen-Dazs.
Yeah, but Alex, you were up to, what was it, 67 cups of coffee a day? So
I know, I'm back down to 3 a day now.
Oh,
You've left me with a jug of coffee today, okay? Because normally I don't make this much coffee, but because she came in this morning, I made more, and I've been drinking it, and I swear to God, I've got palpitations.
I had one.
I'm ready to go, me. I need to go. I've got my mummy. I've got palpitations. I've got coffee. It's all too much. Honestly.
How about you, William? What's your...
Yeah, I mean, I think we've spoken about it before, but I think the danger is because when you drink, because it's a sedative, we tend to drink to take up the edge of our problems. So whenever something happens, we reach for a drink. And I think stopping drinking, you need to get coping mechanisms in place for when you hit the bad time. Because like you always say, Dave, stopping drinking makes life better. It doesn't make it perfect. You're still going to have bad days. And you need to have coping mechanisms in place. So, you know, exercise, meditation, that kind of stuff, probably good. Taking other drugs and binge eating, probably less so good. And particularly if you're talking about drugs, I can't really see the point in giving up alcohol if you're going to start injecting heroin or snorting cocaine. It's probably a bit pointless. But equally, what Simon said, I think you, to a degree, you do need to cut yourself some slack for those first few days, because you need to do what you need to do to get through those days. But for me, you need to be looking at coping mechanisms that work for you that aren't destructive. So I use exercise and reading and cooking, those kind of things. But whatever it is, you need to have them in place. And I don't think really, because for me, sobriety is about leading the best life you can. And I don't necessarily think you're doing that if you're just taking a better or, you know, a different drug, even though arguably it might be less destructive than alcohol. I don't necessarily see if you're sitting around stoned all the time, you're leading the best possible, most enjoyable life you can. I mean, one of the things I hated about alcohol is you're either hungover or you're just leading a half life because you're drugged all the time and you're not really taking anything in. Stopping drinking is about leading a much better and more enjoyable life.
She's actually confirmed it's cannabis that she's talking about. So
that's the most obvious one, because it's fairly common, it's fairly easy to get hold of, and probably on balance it is less destructive than alcohol.
It's still mind altering though, which she says it. It's things, isn't it? If you're going sober because you want to be clear-headed, you want energy, you want to be creative, you want to, like you say, live a better life, then it just defeats the object that, okay, I'm going to save my liver and I'm going to not maybe have a stroke as early, and I'm not, my mental health might not suffer as much, but still you are changing natural chemicals and chemical balance in your brain. So you're still not experiencing the real you, are you?
No, and I think it's not conducive to waking up in the morning feeling fantastic and just wanting to jump out of bed and attack the day, which is what it comes down to for me.
Lisa, you got your hand up.
I was just going to say, my ex-partner went from alcohol and now stays at home smoking weed all day and all night, and I hear the same things. It's not as bad for me as alcohol. I could be doing this, or I was this bad when I drank and I don't do this now. And I'm like, but you're not even on this planet. It's just completely transferred to that. So I think you've got to be really, really careful.
I think there's a line to say that comes with this, these coping mechanisms is kind of, the kind of routines and stuff that we do can turn into reliances, which are very different from addiction, but actually they can seem like the same thing. So you could rely on that exercise or that meeting or that session, and it can even be substitutes, but you just have to check yourself, because when you take that reliance away, that's when you become anxious and vulnerable. And no matter what your coping mechanisms, because I've had it myself, I've become so reliant on things, not obsessed or addicted to things, but I've become reliant on things being in that at that time. And when I can't have it, I'm anxious and I'm a mess. And so I know we just kind of battered around coping mechanisms, but that's just something I have to keep in mind of when I feel like I'm reliant on something. It's dangerous to remove that. So just be kind of conscious about what you're doing.
Yeah. Do you know, another interesting spin was that this year I had a colonoscopy, and they asked me whether I wanted to take a sedative. And when I said I'm sober, I had a choice there. And there's a guy on Instagram called Jeff, his Reaction Recovery, and he smashed his ankle up a few weeks ago. And he went through the whole thing without any sedatives because he didn't want to have that into his system. So it's really interesting how far people take that, isn't it? Where you don't want the mind altering and you go through that pain. There's another interesting twist, because if I'd smashed my ankle up, I think I would be giving me anything.
Yeah, recently when I had procedures, I was quite happy to have morphine, and that's very, very strong. But I just know that the thing I was addicted to was alcohol, and as long as I don't I know my mind would say, right, well, I'm not going to have morphine when I don't need it. So I was very careful with it. So, for example, I had morphine on the first day, and then I was supposed to be on codeine, and I was still in quite a bit of pain by day 3, but I thought, right, I'm not going to have any more codeine now. I can cope with this. So I think you know what? It's very much down to the individual, isn't it? I think your general lifestyle can be unaltered, and that's why I wouldn't suggest recreational drugs, but your lifestyle's going to be unaltered. You do what is necessary, what's right for you, and what feels comfortable for you, and what feels safe for you, because I knew I wouldn't get addicted, but that's not the same for other people. Some people would literally go, right, I'm now addicted to painkillers. So I think it's very hard to kind of draw the line unless you know the individual.
It's true.
Like I check food packets. I won't buy anything with 2% alcohol in it, which puts profiteroles out the window, which is saddening enough. But I think I've read a lot of stuff where it's not the substance, it's the addiction. So, it's actually your mindset versus the actual substance itself. So because I've read so much about that, it's almost like I know I was addicted to alcohol, but actually the logic says that my brain can be addicted to anything. And I don't know how much of that stands true. I don't know, Willie, you might have some insight from a brain man, but that's why I'm scared of all substances, not just the booze.
Lisa, are you having fun in the background there?
I'm trying to get a tissue out. I'm having hay fever attacks. I've told you, there's a lot going on here. I thought I was doing a really good Swan impression.
We're coming to the end, and I think it's been absolutely fascinating having you on, mate. I've learned such a lot from you at a wee age, and I feel really lucky that we live near each other, because we can you can come over and look after the kids while me and Emma go out.
He's like that sort of.
I think your story's fantastic, and Alex, Lisa, you're going to put some links onto it for his blog.
Yeah, it's already on there on Facebook, and it'll go against the YouTubes as well. Just to say that next Saturday it's just the panel. Dave, are you with us next week on the 4th? You're not?
I am now, yeah.
You are now. So it's just the panel. So we're Q&A-ing again for next week. So any questions that you want to put in the group, and we'll do another post to remind you, but that's what we're up to next week. And then you've seen the lineup. We've got more guests coming on, more inspirations. It has been really good though, Ben. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been lovely to meet you. I feel like we've proper met now.
Yeah.
Ben, try and stay on, mate, because we'd like to just round it off when we come off of Facebook. But guys, follow this man. He's a real inspiration. He's a lovely guy. And thanks everyone on the panel. It's been a really good one this week. And we'll see you all next. Get your questions ready for next week. All right. See you all
Thanks,
later.
Dave. See you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See you later.